My name is Chris Reedy. Today's date is July 20th, 2018. With me today is Junior Howell of Muncie, and he was a Marine Corps veteran of World War II, and he's here to speak with us today for the 2018 Ford Oval of Honor project. So, Mr. Howell, can you tell us when and where you were born?
Delaware County, Indiana, June 19th, 1925. Next to the reservoir now.
Okay.
That was corn and tomatoes then.
Full of tomatoes?
Yeah.
How old were you when the war started?
16.
What were your thoughts at that time?
Well, I wanted to go fight.
What were your parents' thoughts at that time?
They didn't want me to. It took me a year to get them to sign. I signed up when I volunteered when I was 17, but I was still in high school. I went ahead, I graduated, and then I was called in service.
And you volunteered, you chose the Marine Corps. Was there anything about, what led you to that decision?
Probably a couple of movies I saw of the Marine Corps. I wanted the action. I don't know why. I'm 16. I don't know that much. I knew I wanted to fight the Japs. That's all I knew. And I wanted to be a Marine.
Was the basic training, your early training, what you had expected?
Not at all. Not at all.
Can you tell us a little bit about the training then?
Yeah, I learned one thing. You only got to hear it once. You better learn fast, because there was no time to explain the second time. It was tough. It was good. And I suppose it was responsible for me making it the next 2 years.
Was there any, while you were training, any grumbling or resentment about what you were going through? Or?
Not resentment. I knew I'd made a mistake in my thoughts, but I was ready to live with that.
The Marines obviously were engaged in the Pacific War against a tenacious foe, the Japanese Imperial Army and the Japanese Navy. What did they tell you? The war had been going on for some time before you saw action.
Oh, yes.
What did they tell you about the soldiers you were about to fight?
Nothing good, but there was nothing good about them. Yeah, there was nothing good to say. It was just prepare yourself and get ready to do it.
What was were you combat infantryman, rifleman, or heavy weapon?
I went into training after boot camp at a little place called Jack's Farm. It was a tank training center. Wasn't very big. So I had my basic training there. Then they transferred me into amphibious tanks and amphibious tractors. So I went to Oceanside, California, where we teach by the sea, and that's how I got to go on that.
What was your function? Was this I'm trying to get the LVT?
LST.
LST.
And LCMs.
Okay.
One was carrying troops, the other was amphibious tanks. So Waterloo was one thing, Okinawa was another.
What, when the invasion took place, what was your function? What was your role at that time?
I was assistant driver, radio man, and machine gunner.
And then your vehicle, were you coming up onto the beach?
Carried the troops, 25, 26 troops. First wave.
You were in the first wave at Pelelu.
And then you go back and get another load. Probably took us all morning back and forth from the ship to the shore till we got everybody ashore. Then we go ahead, join the front lines, protect their flank.
What can you describe? Tell us what the beaches were like when you were bringing troops ashore.
Well, the first invasion, I didn't know what was up against, so I sat up on top of my hatch to see if I could see everything that was going on. We hit the coral reef, which extends out about 300 yards, and it was tough. You couldn't see or anything. You just go like this. I was watching the Navy had some fighters doing some shelling to get us ashore, and all of a sudden one of them, a dive bomber, got hit, went up flames and on down. That's when I get down my hatch, pull the thing shut, and look through my binoculars. So you have no idea.
That was your first combat.
That was the first one.
Did you, as a young man, think you were invincible at that age?
Till I saw that, I began to question it. No, it was like surreal. There was smoke and chaos. And getting ashore, we never made any headway through about 3 days. Our backs was to the ocean. And then we got a little closer, and then the next story comes up. It's a good one.
So, for 3 days, and your commanding officers told you it'd be over in 3 to 4 days. And
we wasn't getting started. Yes.
what kind of thoughts were going through your head at this time?
I don't know. It's just chaos. You didn't know the communication was bad, and we didn't know what was doing, except we was fighting. We'd fight in daytime, they'd fight at night. So it was 24/7 combat.
At what point did fatigue and thirst in the heat?
Oh, the heat was terrible. 115 daytime, 85 at night. No shelter. Couldn't dig a foxhole. You just sweated it out.
What, in the middle of all this chaos, how did you kind of keep yourself going?
I don't know how I did. I really don't. We're just fighting, that's all.
Did your training kind of override any thoughts of fear or
I
flight?
suppose it was there. And I probably could say it got me through it. The training was good. A lot of guys didn't.
So how many days into the Peleliu campaign were you involved? You were wounded. Can you walk us up to your wounds?
Okay. On the 6th day, they called for volunteers. We didn't know for what. I volunteered. They'd only take one man out of the crew. So I knew it was suicide. That's okay, we'll go anyway. They brought up an amphibious tractor that had a 20 millimeter anti-aircraft gun from the Navy mounted inside. They had 2 Navy anti-aircraft specialists, but they had converted it into a flamethrower. We were supposed to go in and clear out these caves with a flamethrower. I don't know. Castile was a driver. I was assistant driver. And the Mountain wasn't on a machine gun. Alverson was on a machine gun. And the two Navy men were on this anti-aircraft gun that's a flamethrower now. It was effective, I'd say, for 200 yards. But they had to fire away from us. Because they fired right over our head, it would drip when they stopped. That napalm would drip down on you. So we had to stay away from that. So we got through that okay and decided to make our first run up there. Where there was some high ground, still all coral. No breeze, no nothing. And what we planned to do was just make kind of a semicircle, because we had them on three sides. So we got halfway through it, and he pulled up in a revetment between the hills, and there's nothing but Japs looking down, firing at us, and I reached over and got him. I said, back out, back out. He did. When he backed out, he turned like this, and they hit us with a high explosive shell and knocked the track off the sprocket. Now we're stuck there. He comes out, I come out. It had taken his foot off just above the ankle, and there's just blood hit me like that. He said, get the hell out of here. They hit us. Everybody scrambles. I get back to the front lines. Well, I followed his blood, but he was on his hands and knees, going faster than I could. And I get up to him, and he had a bullet here, one here. He was dead. So I went on down the hill and told them what happened. They said, you're hit. And I said, no, that's Castile's blood. Well, some of it was mine, but I didn't know it. They put him on a stretcher, and then I go blank for 3 months.
Wow. And you wake up on Guadalcanal, an island 1,500 miles away.
Yeah, from where we started. Don't remember that trip at all.
How long were you on Guadalcanal? Do you know?
I was on there twice. 6 months the first time. Probably this time. I was there about 2 months before I joined the 6th Division to hit Okinawa.
Having barely survived Peleliu and you had wounds, how did you feel about joining the 6th Marines and knowing another invasion was coming up?
I just know it's coming up. I didn't have any feelings about it. I didn't like it, but you don't have a choice.
What was the morale in your unit at that time? The morale of the troops in your small unit?
We joked about everything. Keep your mind off of it, I guess. I was with a bunch of great guys.
Describe, I guess, how Peleliu was different from Okinawa.
Close combat. Okinawa is a large island, a lot of artillery, a lot of heavy shelling. But Peleliu was, we're there and we're here.
One of the things I read was that, and you spoke to it, you fought during the day and the Japanese fought at night. And at night, the Marines would sleep 2 to a foxhole, or be 2 to a foxhole. One would sleep, one would stay awake.
Yeah.
Did you encounter that yourself?
No, on Peleliu, you didn't have foxholes. You couldn't dig one. It's coral. But you paired up, one stayed awake, one tried, you didn't sleep. Very little.
And when you went to Okinawa, were you still driving or assistant driver in the tracked vehicles, or had they changed your role for that?
No, same thing, except you didn't have troops. You just lined up with the front line and stayed with them. I wasn't actually in a division. I was attached to a division. Okay. Because there wasn't enough amphibious to go around. You'd leave here and go here.
And you were providing fire support for the frontline Marines?
Yeah.
How did, when you came around, and that's a big vehicle, it can be a big target also.
Yeah, that too. When we were on Okinawa, when we was making a charge, the infantry, we were supposed to head ahead of them. They wanted to stay away from us because we drive the heavy fire and they're afraid of the explosions. But that's the way you do it.
But you were there to assist as well, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there were times they were grateful.
All the way through.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hit there on April the 1st, and I was there till April, May, June, July. It was August when we secured it, so it took about 4 months.
Could you tell, Okinawa being the last major combat of the Pacific War, could you sense that the Japanese were also tiring of the war, or were they still full of fight? How would you describe the enemy?
I left Okinawa to join another outfit on Saipan that was drawing new equipment to hit Tokyo Bay. So we didn't know the war was over. Not until, well, we knew it the day it came out, but we heard it by shortwave, yeah.
How did you feel?
Relieved. we couldn't believe it, no. We was prepared to go to Japan. But I didn't want to.
That would have been your third amphibious invasion.
Yeah.
Had that happened, how did you feel about your chances having gone through two very brutal fights?
We didn't have a chance. We just faced it. Your time's run out.
The war, when the war ended, did you come home immediately, or were you sent on occupation duty?
I was on Saipan when it ended, and it was another 2 months before, and then another month getting back to the States. And then I was at Camp Pendleton for a month, being discharged. So it took quite a while for the process, yeah.
Among your family and friends, how did they receive you when you came home, and could they understand what you had been through?
Everybody was great. I remember we docked at I think San Diego, and we had to go back to Camp Pendleton, and they had the highways lined, both sides, people yelling. Everybody was great. Just absolutely, I was dumbfounded with it.
When you look back on your times in the Marines, what did you take away from that for the rest of your life?
I hate to say this, but it's what I, I just said I was going to enjoy the rest of my life. That's all I had in mind. Get me out of the uniform, get me back to where I was, and let me go. And that's the way I lived.
Did you take advantage of the GI Bill, or did you just go straight into the workforce?
Well, I got some kind of money for a year. That was off the GI Bill. I don't remember how much or anything. It wasn't a whole lot. But our pay was only $21 a month, so it don't make a difference. And I got pretty well back in things pretty quick. I was ready to drop it.
You'd have enough of the uniform ready to become a civilian again.
Yeah, I know. I wore the trousers some till I wore them out, but I didn't wear my uniform ever again.
You told me in the newspaper article talks about it as well, that it took decades before you received your Purple Heart. Can you talk to us a little bit about your wounds and also why it took so long?
Well, I never pursued it, but we had a fellow with Veterans Affairs in 1993. He got into some stuff and wondered why I didn't get it. I said, well, I never applied for it. So he did, and it was turned down. Said they couldn't find any things showed that I was in combat. So he was going to carry it on, and I said, forget it. Nate Jones took over this guy's spot in Veterans Affairs about, how long ago, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. He asked me the same thing. Why didn't you get it? So I told him the story. He said, there's something wrong here. Because I had a copy of my record book, plain as day. So he got on it. 3 months later, I get a call from the commander of the Marine Corps in Washington, D.C. He said it had been approved. I said, thanks, and hung up. That was it.
Yeah.
But they had a big to-do when I got it here to the courthouse and everything. But I was glad it came through. But I was kind of upset because they couldn't find anything about it, you know. Mm-hmm. But it's all right. It's all over now.
Yeah. When, you know, obviously we're taping this, we're going to show it on our air, but as I mentioned to you, no one really knows what Pelelu is and what it was about. And the memories of World War II are fading.
Yeah.
So for our viewers, younger generations, what do you want the younger generation to know about you, your service, and the men who served with you?
Well, I think everybody was ready to go to fight. I mean, we was all upset over the sneak attack. That's being what it was. Some went this way, some went this way. I never regretted going in. Didn't really like boot camp. Didn't really like combats, but it's what I was supposed to do. I felt like it. And I still feel like it was the best move at the time. But Pelelu, I was a little upset. That never got mentioned the way it should. I mean, 10,000 troops on a little island you never heard of is a big loss. It was only hit.
One second. My apologies. I'm there. I'm sorry. Go right ahead. Pick back up
The only thing, and here's what we found out later. It was hit because MacArthur wanted it hit, because it preceded his landing on
There.
the Philippines.
So do you blame MacArthur for the
yeah,
casualties?
every Marine does.
So a lot of resentment among the Marine Corps for MacArthur.
Oh yeah, he wanted all the. He wanted to take all the good stuff, and we did all the fighting.
What were your relations like with the Navy folks? Did you get along with the Navy, the corpsmen on board the ships? And
Oh yeah, yeah, they revered us. These guys were used to taking it to combat. They knew they could tell us stories. Oh, it was great.
late in the Peleliu battle, some of the Marine units were relieved by men from the 81st Infantry Division, the Army Division. How did the Marines and the Army troops get along?
I don't remember. We got off as soon as they got there. The fighting was over. They had hit Anwar, which is a little island, I don't know, somewhere else. They mopped that up, there's nothing there. And they were there till we was relieved, and then they come in for the occupation.
Okay.
So I had nothing to do with the Army, Never saw one.
But they were there somewhere. We're
When,
sure.
when I left,
Yeah. What are, because, when we get to various anniversaries, there's more interest in people. Do people stop you if you have a veteran's hat and talk to you about your service?
Oh, yeah. That's never stopped.
Do they, what questions do you get, and what's the best way to talk to you about your service?
Well, you can ask any question you want, I can talk about it, but I won't unless I'm asked. Mm-hmm. So they can ask anything. It doesn't bother me. But I don't want to impose it on anyone just because I was a Marine. But yes, anytime anything happens, it's mentioned. I have no problem with that.
Within the last 10 years, I think, Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg produced a video series on the Pacific War called The Pacific. The Battle of Peleliu is featured in that series.
Yes.
And it's based around Robert Leckie, who is in the 1st Marine Division. He served at Guadalcanal and New Gloucester and also Peleliu.
That was 1st Division, yeah.
And from that, I think you get a truer sense of what it was like, but not like Well, what do people not understand about combat?
Well, I don't understand anything about it either. I mean, what's your choice? It's not good. Some stories I don't want to tell. I mean, okay, it's unbelievable. Don't let it go. Yeah, it's just it don't go in words.
It's something that someone who hasn't been there can't understand.
Oh, I don't think anybody could know that hasn't been there. I know I couldn't if I hadn't been there. Like I said, it's surreal. It fades away like a dream.
Did you, after the war, did you have any like nightmares or bad dreams or anything that affected you and deeply?
Yeah. I was married to her mother, and we were living with my folks. I was staying there, 2nd story, bathroom up there. And I'm taking a bath one morning. And I looked down and I saw a scar here that I'd never noticed before. And I screamed. They heard me downstairs come up. I'm in the nude and they come running in the bathroom. And I'm pointing at the scar. I don't know where it come from. So funny things happen, yeah.
Let me check my notes real quick, Junior.
You go ahead.
And while I'm doing that, Eric, Heather can hear me. If there's anything I need to go back over or something we need to explore while I do a few things. Should have silenced that earlier.
Curious about honor flights or the World War II memorial in D.C.
Okay. Were you involved in an honor flight, sir?
Am I?
An honor flight?
Oh,
where
yes, yes.
Would you mind talking to us a little bit about that experience?
Well, that was put on by,
Can you rephrase it as in?
it was statewide. And it was just a trip to Washington, D.C. We flew out of Indianapolis. It was all about World War II, but I can't remember exactly. It was a few years ago. When was it? I don't know. It was great, but I can't tell you anything about other than that. There was a plane load of from Indianapolis, and we was there all day and came back at night. Great tour. Arlington Cemetery, some Marine Corps things. But it was just one day, so boom, there and back. It was an honor.
Obviously, there were other veterans
Oh,
with
yeah.
you on that trip. What was the interaction like between you and the other veterans?
Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. I didn't know anybody. But we was all getting older, and I guess we just sat there and looked at each other. Nobody's going to tell each other stories.
I had thought, civilians and veterans
know,
have a hard
yeah.
time talking the same
Well-
language, but maybe veterans are a little easier to talk, but it may be a generational thing as well.
Well, yeah. Sometimes when you get off work, you don't want to talk about work. So it's the same way with veterans and fighting, Why talk about it?
Thinking, Heather, is there anything else?
Memorial,
World War II Memorial in D.C., did you visit that? Do you recall anything from that visit?
Well, I don't. Well, maybe that was the honor flight.
That's probably.
It might have been because we was at the War Memorial. Yeah, I remember they took us through that. It was the same thing, yeah.
It was there, it was a pleasant experience, but you don't have the details of that trip, maybe.
No.
thoughts on the bomb? If there's
It was an honor. It was informative, but not really. We knew what it was about.
Let me take you back to August of 1945. You're on Saipan after Okinawa,
Yeah.
and you hear about the atomic weapons. What were your thoughts? How did you feel about that at the time?
Ecstatic. Well, when they dropped the first one, we was still at war. Yeah, we're for it. Hooray. Couldn't believe it. We was ready to go to Japan. Didn't want to. We didn't have to. Good.
That seems to be the general consensus among men who were in the Pacific Theater at the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we was sick of combat.
And most of them said it probably saved my life. It's hard to argue with that.
Oh, yeah. I figured I was done. I really did. You didn't even dwell on it. Part of your existence, yeah, I guess.
A general acceptance, maybe, of
I guess.
what was coming.
Yeah.
So you were never in Japan on occupation duty.
No.
You went straight back to
No,
the States. You had enough
I-
points built.
I was called in to tell I could go home, but I could go with the occupation if I wanted to. I said, that's a no-brainer. I want to go home.
Yeah.
And I don't regret that either. I was done with it. I had a little trouble for a few months getting my nerves settled down and everything, and it was mentioned a few times, but I guess I got over it. Yeah.
Or E.B. Sledge, another former Marine who wrote his memoir, which is Helmet for My Pillow, I think, or With the Old Breed. It's one of those two. Leckie wrote one and Sledge wrote the other, but he came home from the war and he needed that time just to find himself as well. Did you have any experiences with other veterans who also found it hard to adjust to civilian life?
Yeah. I had some guys that I knew before the service that they weren't the same person that I went to school with. They were in Never Never Land. Or I couldn't understand them. Maybe it was me. But I don't think you ever fully get it out of your system. It's just something that's indelible in your mind.
Heather? I'm talking.
How do you hear about FDR's?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. In April of 1945,
Right.
you would have probably been on Okinawa at the
The
time.
first day of April we hit.
And shortly thereafter, FDR dies.
Yes.
What was your reaction, your personal reaction, and the troops around you? How did they respond?
I don't remember. He died a few days before we heard about it because we were still in combat. Nobody even thought anything about it. As far as I know, there was no conversation. I don't remember except hearing that he died. That's all I knew. Didn't care. I had other things to worry about. But, yeah, it didn't affect me one way or the other.
You had a job to do. You're in the middle of it.
Uh,
You're in the middle of a job, the war.
Yeah. It was secondary.
And I think, when we look back at him and his presidency, obviously he was very important as a wartime president as well. We maybe infer that everybody was affected by his death, but in a combat zone and in a war situation, there are people dying.
It didn't change anything.
Yeah.
No.
You just kept doing
Keep grinding.
On Okinawa, the Marines also served alongside Army units.
Yeah.
Did you have any interaction with the Army?
I didn't know. I suppose the most interaction that I have with the Army would be the heavy artillery groups.
And your fire support, you had support from planes, you mentioned those earlier.
yeah.
Ships,
Oh, yeah.
land-based artillery.
You can't imagine a landing. Your ship's as far right and as far left as you could see. And you can't even see the island you're going to hit. You're maybe 2 miles away. And it's just total confusion. I mean, it looks like the world's coming to an end. And then all of a sudden you're in the middle of it. You join and here we go. It's a funny thing. I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
When you see that and your Amtrak is headed for the beach and you see all the destruction, is any part of you thinking, I hope they're all the enemy's flattened. This is going to be a cakewalk. Did any of that go through your head?
Well, till I saw that plane get hit, I thought it was going to be a cakewalk. And then I buttoned up. Then from then on, it's just chaos. That's the only thing I could say. Nobody knows what they're doing. They know what we're supposed to do. We know what we plan to do, but you can't do it.
Perfect plan is only perfect until it makes contact with the enemy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Bless their hearts. They think they know, but they don't.
Yeah. And that's the chaos of war. You know?
Yeah. It turns the world upside down.
You saw and experienced combat up close, and you saw men perform extraordinary deeds, acts of heroism. What was the moment that stuck in your head of heroism or self-sacrifice?
Okay. The first casualty I saw, didn't know the man. I knew who he was because he'd been pointed out. He was a German citizen that had abandoned Germany and came to Mexico because he didn't want to fight with the Germans. He left Mexico to come to the United States and join the Marine Corps. He was probably in his early 30s. The first casualty I saw when we hit the beach, here comes a guy, nobody else on the beach. Here comes one guy running. And then the closer he got, he was peppered with shrapnel. He was bleeding from about 1,000 places. And I thought, how's he running? And about that time he collapsed. And I guess he died right there because nobody was around to help him. That guy could have still been living in Germany. Now there's a patriot. But I don't know his name, never talked to him. But I'd seen him aboard ships and somebody pointed him out to me that the story about him. So they knew.
So it makes you wonder what, as a German expatriate, what he went through.
Why?
The harassment. But he he wanted to fight for his adopted country.
A guy had his mind that Germany was wrong for him, and he winds up getting killed for us. By the Japs, not the Germans. Funny story. I mean.
Yeah. Did you think about that after the war? Probably not at the time, but after the war, think about, when you're in combat, you don't think about higher ideas like liberty or freedom or anything like that.
Oh, no.
Did you think about it after?
Oh, yeah.
What motivated some men to do what they did?
Exactly, yeah. What motivates a guy to do that?
Yeah.
I volunteered. I don't know if I would have left the country to go fight against us because we were wrong. But that was in his mind, I guess, and he lived it the way he wanted to.
Got to respect that.
He had an idea. He died for it, but he didn't give up.
Yeah. We'll see if Heather has anything else for us. She's smarter than I am, so I always defer to her.
She's good unless he wants to talk about Pearl Harbor.
Okay. We touched on it a little bit about Pearl Harbor. You were 16.
Yeah.
And that motivation to join, did you feel like left behind? The 18-year-olds or they ran off to the colors
right away. I was living in the rural area, and I was staying overnight with Bob Waller's family. And the next morning we got up, milked the cows, went back to have breakfast about whenever we got done with that, and the radio's on. here comes the story about Pearl Harbor was just bombed. Well, you don't even know where Pearl Harbor is. Didn't sound good. But from then on, it was, how soon can I get in? Yeah. I knew that meant I'd go.
Even when you saw reports from the Pacific, Guadalcanal, New Gloucester, Tarawa, those islands,
Yeah.
and you know, it was serious business. Did that deter you? Did that put any doubt in your mind?
No. No, I was determined to go.
Job to be done.
And to top that, my dad's arm, he had one arm off here. He'd got in touch with a senator. I forget his name. He lived out by Yorktown. And I could have stayed out of the war altogether. I had a complete, what do you call it, deferment. And I overrode that. He finally signed a letter for me, and I got in the Marine Corps.
Was your father a veteran of World War One?
No, he'd lost his arm.
Okay.
So he wasn't. He was 15 when he lost his arm, so
Okay.
he couldn't go in the service. Yeah.
It wasn't a combat loss.
No.
I've talked to several gentlemen of your era, and their fathers served in World War
Oh
One.
yeah.
But he had lost it prior to. But
Yeah.
because of his injury, and you were in a rural area, you would have had a deferment
Oh yeah.
to do farm work to stay at home
that's
because
what
of that.
it's for, yeah.
Yeah. And well, I salute you because you still went. You had the determination.
Yeah. Yeah, there's ever a doubt in my mind I was going in. Just telling Dad and Mom how to write a letter to do it.
And what was the reaction when you came home in 45 or early 46?
Everybody was treated like a hero.
Did you feel that in yourself?
No. No, it's you just happen to be home.
Yeah.
The rest don't mean shit.
But the other people that you served with, you saw men do heroic things. Do you consider those men to be heroes?
I guess everybody was that was exposed to the front lines. I don't know. Maybe there's some support units or something that couldn't get it, but anybody that's looked the enemy in the eye would have to feel the same way. Not a good feeling.
I think many people would consider you a hero as well, sir.
I suppose, but the only thing I know is I'm here.
That's good. We're very thankful for it.
Yeah.
You are too. Yeah. Thank you for taking your time to be with us today,
All
Mr.
right.
Howell. I appreciate it.
A few years ago, I wouldn't have done this.
Did you have problems talking about your experiences
For
still?
a while. For a few years.
When did you find you could first open up about it?
Well, I got out when I was 20. I'd say it took 20 years.
So maybe in the 60s,
Probably.
1960s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did it, I guess, not feel good, but was it helpful for you to talk about your experiences?
I wouldn't volunteer to get up and make a speech about it. I thought by this being an interview, I could answer questions. I think I'm able to do that. But other than that, no, I just didn't want to talk about it.
That's very common.
Oh, I
among
think so.
The men from your
Yeah.
era. They just, I talked to a Marine veteran of Iwo Jima,
Yeah.
who went in the third wave. And he said he just came home. Next day he got up and started working for the family business, and he left it all behind him.
You have to. Drive you nuts. Too many bad things about it.